LSU is now 2-1 and 1-0 in SEC play. Somehow, some way, after securing and surviving a 36-33 win at South Carolina. Thanks for checking out Louisiana versus all y'all. I'm Jarrett Roser, and just tuning in with some quick takeaways on the heels of what was an absolute roller coaster ride and fever dream of a game up there in South Carolina. That, I mean, the highs and lows of all three teams on the field in terms of the Tigers, Gamecocks, and the officials. It was, again, a roller coaster ride of a 4+ hour affair to open SEC play for the Tigers against South Carolina. And let's just go ahead and get some of the excuses out the way, ultimately, where you have an 11 a.m. kickoff, SEC opener against a team that had just played an SEC game a week ago, tough place to play that the Tigers haven't played in a long time. A storm week in Louisiana, a lot of injuries that the Tigers are trying to overcome. And so a lot of young guys being thrown into the fire a little bit earlier than probably you would have ideally liked to have seen them. And I say, let's get all the excuses out the way, because ultimately at the end of a day on a Saturday afternoon in the fall for an SEC football team that is in the top 20 in the rankings and went into the season with expectations of being a potential playoff contender, excuses, nobody cares. Nobody cares about any of those excuses. They just want to see you win football games. And look, at the end of this Saturday afternoon, LSU won a football game. And I think there's something to be said for that, for any team going on the road in SEC play and coming away with a victory. And so, I mean, take that and what positives come with that. But ultimately, I think three things are kind of true in that. I think South Carolina is probably a better football team after watching them for 4 quarters and also looking at what they did last week against Kentucky. After watching this team, I think South Carolina is a better team than I expected going into the season. I think LSU give a ton of credit to the fact that they were able to fight for 4 quarters and have the type of gritty performance to be able to pull out a game that was really ugly for a lot of those 4 quarters, and particularly early on. And at the same time, for a team with much higher expectations than beating South Carolina in week 3, you have to look at shortcomings that continue to be really frustrating early on this season for LSU and realize that with as much more as is ahead in terms of what you hope the expectations and goals that could still potentially be accomplished for this football team are, as well as the fact that the degree of difficulty on the schedule will only continue to ramp up. You have to be concerned with some of these aspects that continue to haunt this LSU football team early on in the season. Haunt might be a strong word, but certainly a lot of frustrations with different areas. And you look at a team that was down 17-0 in this game, did not start well, not shocked with an 11 a.m. game on the road and SEC play and a tough place to play and all those things I mentioned. It's not an excuse, but it's not something that was particularly surprising. Honestly, LSU, with as bad as the start of this game went for the Tigers, was probably fortunate to only be down 17-0 there in the second quarter, because you come out and you are having trouble tackling, you're leaving wide open running lanes for South Carolina to gash down the field. You're having issues on special teams. You're having issues establishing the run. You're having issues in pass pro. I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but all of these things are incredibly frustrating. And I mean, take your pick which one you want to harp on the most. Just a lot of issues that led to LSU being down. And even when LSU started to put some things together and make runs and seem like they had a chance to kind of take control, issues that continue to compound it and leave it as much of a roller coaster ride against the Gamecocks as it proved to be, all the way down to the wire, where South Carolina had an opportunity to potentially send things to overtime with a field goal attempt there as time expired. All that said, let's talk about some of the positives as well. I think a lot of people will probably we'll start with the offensive side. A lot of people will probably remember this as kind of the Caden Durham breakout game. The freshman running back from Duncanville, Texas, ends up with 98 yards, on 11 carries, 2 touchdowns, almost 9 yards a carry. And so for a team that has struggled to establish the run with any level of consistency the last couple of weeks, that was really a breath of fresh air. That was a huge difference maker, providing a spark for the offense to get some things going throughout the course of this game. It'll be interesting to see how much more we potentially see of Caden moving forward, because that was something that this team needed to see sooner than later, and they finally got some of that over the duration of this game. Passing game, Garrett Nussmeier, 24 for 40 for 285 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. I think you continue to see Garrett establishes himself as a high round NFL guy in terms of just his ability to make any throw in the field, his handle in the game, and just being absolutely nails in terms of his toughness under pressure, taking hits, bouncing back, playing through, some pain and moments clearly on the field, and also just managing game situations, being down, fighting, never giving up. And also the way that this team rallies around him at the lead of that offense. His relationship, his chemistry with Kyron Lacey, the standout receiver, what they were able to do coming up with big plays and big moments, including a crucial connection on the sideline, a great play late to help position LSU to retake the lead down the stretch. It's been one of the highlights early on the season, is just watching Nuss and Kyron go to work and do everything that they're able to do. Mason Taylor becomes the LSU career leader in receptions by a tight end. Credit to him and what he's meant to this offense the last 3 years. Aaron Anderson, I mentioned the emergence of Caden Durham. It's been great to see the former Edna Carr stand out, coming into his own as a key weapon on this LSU offense. He seems like each week in pivotal moments, he's been able to come up with big plays and be another go-to for Nussmeier. He ends up with 5 catches for 96 yards over the course of today. Josh Williams coming through with the late run there on the goal line. So credit to him. Not a great day overall for the veteran running back behind that offensive line. He ends up only averaging 2 yards a carry on his 10 attempts, but had the big one over the goal line to help LSU finish this thing down the stretch. And then on the flip side, for all of the frustrations defensively, Whit Weeks ends up with 11 tackles, 8 solo. Braden Swinson, I thought, had a really big game. He ends up with 3 sacks and a forced fumble, was really big in some moments. And he and Harold Perkins, who it was talked about during the TV broadcast, some of the frustrations, and Kirk Herbstreit said one of the biggest mysteries in college football of Harold Perkins navigating some of the positional dynamics. And it's obviously been such a huge talking point for the local media and fan base, and everybody kind of asking Brian Kelly about the role that Harold Perkins plays. When there were opportunities for, and this is going to surprise no one, when there were opportunities for Perk and Braden Swinson to really kind of pin their ears back and get after South Carolina's quarterbacks, that was when they were both at their best. They made plays otherwise, but in terms of their biggest impact plays during the course of the game, it was pressure situations where they both stepped up. You end up seeing Howard Perkins almost getting to the quarterback on a play where Sage Ryan beats him by a step, forces a fumble. Howard Perkins ends up with the fumble recovery, but Howard, when he had a chance to get into the backfield, was really big. Looking at just overall some pressure numbers that were huge for LSU's defense: 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. I mentioned the 3 each for Braden Swinson, Savion Jones, and Sage Ryan, each with a sack. Sage with another tackle for loss. Paris Shand credited with a tackle for loss in there. Jordan Gilbert, on a day that was at best hit or miss, ups and downs, roller coaster in its own right for the LSU safeties, he brought some explosiveness in some of the tackles that he was able to make, including a forced fumble on a play. We mentioned Sage with a forced fumble. Major Burns ends up with a fumble recovery. And so, a lot of tough moments through the course of the day for the LSU safeties and secondary as a whole. but they did have some timely plays that were crucial in being able to pull this thing out. Another note with that secondary, Zy Alexander. Hopefully he's okay after going down and needing some attention from the training staff. He's a guy that worked his ass off to get from Louisville to Southeast Louisiana to LSU last year, and then work his way back from injury to get back on the field these last couple of weeks. Just hoping it's something minor for him and that he's able to shake back. But I'm sure just kind of a quick reactions piece that I've missed something, and make sure that you check out the kind of weekend recap of all of the college football action, as well as some of the Saints action when Daniel Hawks and I connect on Monday to recap some things and have a little bit more time to have unpacked some things. But on the fly, I think that's kind of a lot of the gist. A weird afternoon of SEC football that LSU ultimately comes out on top of. A lot to be frustrated about as you look forward to some of these games that are ahead for this Tigers team, but also you have to take some of the positives of gritting your way through an SEC road game and coming out 1-0 for the weekend and 1-0 to start SEC play. Thanks as always for checking out Louisiana versus all y'all. I'm Jarrett Roser. Until that episode of Podnas on Monday, and until next time, until next weekend for the Tigers, y'all be well.